What's up, everybody? I'm BobbyFi. I'm here with my man Eric Sheets Haber, and we are going to be going through some DraftKings and FanDuel lineup builds. We're mostly going to be talking about DraftKings, but we're going to talk about some general strategy. Sheets, if you guys don't know him, I'm going to let him introduce himself. He's going to talk a little bit about just his method of playing DFS. I've known Sheets for a long time. He's very well known in the poker world and is a good guy, a good DFS player, and we're going to learn a lot from him, just his strategy, and then we're going to talk a little bit about mine as well and go through tonight's slate. So, Sheets, with that, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty well. Still a little steam that we got away with playing 1% DSJ and got 11X, and it didn't really help too much.
Yep, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, so as you were saying, I mean, I don't know, a lot of people out there might know me from the poker world, either playing or backing or things like that. But you know, my real background is I've run a hedge fund for about 15 years. I've been a money manager pretty much my whole life, and those skills translate pretty well to poker in a way, but specifically to DFS as well. And what I'm preparing one of these days is to do like a full video on how to compare stock market investing versus DFS portfolio management, which has a lot of similarities. But even for today's slate, you know, I just wanted to just review just the way I look at DFS and the way I look at lineup construction in the way that I would kind of look at the stock market, sort of, without getting too much into the stock market stuff. So, like, for example, when I look at a slate and I look at what I'm investing in or betting on or gambling on or whatever it is, with DFS, you know, the first thing I look at is good players. You know, everybody knows who good players are. I could ask my son who a good player is, they'll be able to tell me. And even within DFS, the community, you'll be able to come up with good plays. I mean, a lot of people subscribe to different sites. They're all out there. You can run optimizers, and you could come up with these good plays. And I'm like that. I mean, I have access to the same projections everybody else does. And coming up with good plays is not the most difficult thing in the world, but that's just not the end of the story. Just similar to the stock market, you can come up with good stocks, but not all plays are the same. In other words, it depends on what you're looking to invest in. So like if you were a cash game player, two guys who projected similarly with even similar median projections, one could be completely useless for a cash game, and one could be completely useless for a GPP. It just kind of depends on what you're looking to do. The other thing you have to keep in mind is what else could take you off of a good projected player, or what else could lead you to not just pick the best plays. And then you start talking about ownership, you know, how popular a player is. Similar to stocks, I mean, if you were going to pick a stock that nobody was expecting to do well, and it actually did do well, you'd probably get a lot more juice out of it than if you invested in, say, I don't know, a very popular stock that everybody's expecting to do well. And likewise, similarly, in DFS, if you pick a guy that, look, some min price guy who everybody knows is going to go for 12X, all the projection systems say the same thing. I mean, that's one thing, but if you have a guy that's going to get 12X or maybe even 8X, who's not going to be owned as much, then you know that's a reason why you would pivot off of that guy, off of the higher owned guy. And then the third thing that I kind of talk about is which plays kind of correlate better with one another. Like I could pick, you know, 8, 9 good plays, but if they don't work well together, similarly, if I could pick you 30 good stocks, but if they all just kind of don't work well together, it's kind of, I don't want to say useless, but that's kind of the art of DFS and the art of portfolio management, is picking which players play well together. And I tell you this really quick story, because when I first started talking to Bobby, talking to you about this stuff, you even mentioned to me, you know, lineup construction is really kind of the key to this. And that's kind of what interested me in DFS in the first place. And I can't tell you how important that is, because the first thing I was saying is when Bobby and I would first start going over plays and whatever, part of me is like, well, why is he even telling me his plays? I'm going to sort of be competing against him, but he doesn't really care too much. And I figured out why pretty quickly, is that for like a long period of time, I'd make the same plays. I'd have the same access to the same plays that other people would have, but I would lose. I'm like, what's going on? I mean, and first, you know, and for a user, someone that accesses all this content, I could feel a lot of the pain out there. You hear these people come out and give their plays, and you play them, and then you lose, and these people come on the next day and say, oh my God, I killed it. Well, what the hell? Like, what did I do wrong? Well, so much of it comes down to how those plays work well together, or when you don't want to play guys in the same lineup, that is responsible for an incredible amount of your ROI.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Well put. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. It's really good stuff. And I think it's a really good way of looking at this. And, there's so many ways that I can compare this. I obviously don't have the same background you do, but like I do, and just in terms of poker and just the way you analyze things, there's a way to piece things together that is really key here. And like you said, everybody's going to have good plays. It's about how to put them together, especially in today's NBA, where you're not even trying to just find the good plays anymore. You're trying to find the exceptional play, because there's just too many on most nights, and the prices are all messed up on DraftKings. Anyway, we're going to go through we're going to go game by game actually, but we're going to look at your lineup builds real quick, and then if you open up one of the screens and do an edit, we can go through game by game if you want.
Well, yeah, and it's funny when you were saying, well, let's get prepared or whatever. All I did for this particular preparation is, I went to the sites I look at for projections, and there are zillions of them out there, and I just ran optimals. I just ran optimal lineups, and you guys all know how to do this, hopefully, and come up with 3 sets of quote unquote best plays, okay, or best lineups. And one of the reasons I do that, by the way, is just kind of see who'll be chalk, right? And the other way is just, again, just to show you how to construct. You start with what you think could be good plays, and Bobby and I will go through it. And first thing we'll do is just double check, make sure that nothing's wrong, that these are decent plays, and then we'll go ahead and just try to construct and see if we can't make some good lineups out of this. The other thing I did, by the way, is on the side is I just made a list of, based on the ownerships that I looked at now, and again, this is early in the day, and I look at different providers' ownership projections. So, everything can kind of be different, but, as the day goes on, the different sites just kind of merge sort of, and you won't get that much discrepancy towards the end. And so these are just kind of like the list of of ownerships that I'll go back to when we go into construction. So, with that, I mean, we could just go through and just start plowing away.
Let's do it. Let's open up. Let's take a look at your first lineup here. So basically, this is an interesting slate. I'm just going to go through a real quick thing on my builds. At first look, I don't usually do this when I build, and I'm not building like thousands, but I'm talking about building like 20 and then maybe spreading them out. I'm finding myself having a hard time not clicking the automatic one player from Minnesota, one player from Washington, and automatically possibly one player from the Rockets, just based on limited number of bodies. I think Westbrook's going to end up playing. In that case, I love him. That's just sort of where I'm at right now.
Well, we could start talking about that. So you wanted to play one player from Minnesota and one player from Washington, or one player from that
basically,
game?
I feel like I'll go through and edit my scripts and correlate, but I think that it makes sense to try and get as much exposure to that game as possible. Setting a minimum of 1, a maximum of 6 players from that game, I don't think is the worst idea. The problem is some of the pricing, but I just think it's really hard. Like we'll get into that game later on, but I think it's really hard for a huge portion of those guys just to miss, for them all to miss, basically.
So when you say that, so what you'll do, and I hate to stray from what we said we were going to do, but
sure.
So when you say that, you'll put that rule, and you'll say min 1, max 3 from each, and then you'll just run it, and you'll, again, everybody has their own favorite projection systems or whatever, whether you use your own or whatever, and then you just let the projections kind of spew out lineups, and then you just kind of eyeball them.
No, but I mean, I'm building it all within my player pool. Like, for example, tonight I'll have probably 20%. As of right now, I have 20% Hachimura, who's 5,100 in that game, who's projected at, pretty low ownership across the board. I'm basically trying to be double the weight on every player in that game. And I wouldn't just make that as a rule. It's just specifically, I go to each guy and the pricing works. I want to be ahead of the field on Karl Anthony Towns. I want to be ahead of the field on Bradley Beal. I want to be ahead of the field on Isaiah Thomas. I want to be ahead of the field on Covington. I want to be ahead of the field on Hachimura. I want to be ahead of the field on Bryant, and at least double the field probably in most of those cases. So that means just by default, one of those guys is going to coincidentally end up in my lineups anyway. If I'm going to have a minimum set, why not get the correlation? Because what if this game stays close and you get the usage down the stretch? I mean, playing that Beal Towns lineup and maybe throwing in a Covington or Hachimura in there, or both. This game goes into overtime 5-6% of the time almost, or between 4 and 6% depending. Yeah, it's a 5.5 point spread now, so about 5%. Even if it was just close down the stretch, you're going to get usage out of these guys in such a high paced environment. We see what happened. I mean, Boston put up 147 on Minnesota. Like, and Minnesota plays no defense. Like, I mean, they hold the ball sometimes on offense a little bit longer than they used to, but they play pretty fast too. And I mean, they play really fast too. And I don't know. It's just, to me, it's hard to not look at that. I do think things are going to open up later in the day that are going to steer us different directions, but I like having that at least as an outline of a core. And then Houston, just with the injuries, even if Westbrook plays, well, first of all, if Westbrook plays, I want to play Westbrook. And then if I'm not going to play Westbrook, even if I am, I'm interested in guys like Tucker. I'm interested, I want to be well ahead of the field on him. I want to be ahead of the field on Harden, probably, or right near the field. I want to be ahead of the field on Tyson Chandler. I want to be ahead of the field on Austin Rivers. I want to be a little bit ahead of the field, although I'm using it as a placeholder mostly, on Cephalosha. I just think that there's going to be minutes enough for these guys to really produce. And yeah, it mostly goes to Westbrook and Harden, so it'll mostly be just Westbrook for me. But I don't mind if that means I'm going to end up, as of right now, just to not give anything away, if Westbrook plays, I think I'm probably going to have around 50% of them on this slate. It feels like people are going to joke about chasing. Westbrook's 8,400, guys. He picked up 4 fouls in the first quarter in the last game. He is not going to put up less than 40, like, almost ever, just period. And he's going to put up 60s and 70s. And there's nothing about this matchup that scares me one bit. So
what's interesting is you kept on saying, I want to be ahead of the field on this, ahead of the field on that. And, it's got to be a zero-sum game in some sense. So there's got to be things that you're going to be below the field on. And one of the games we didn't even, we'll get to later is, the decisions people always have to make is LeBron James, AD, or both, or zero, right? And, so maybe those will end up places you're underweight. But we'll look at that. But, one thing I noticed, it's so funny, I mentioned that these initial builds that I created were literally, I had just literally no correlation issues. I just wanted to run plays.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that this completely, I don't say random, just like best play build just has, 2 Minnesotas and 2 Washingtons, right? It's got 2 guys from the Golden State game and then just a couple of randoms. So when we go back to what I was saying about, you want to get something that's correlated, it looks like you're kind of in the game. But the only thing that I would say before we even move on is, one thing that this is lacking is contrariness, right? Because even if you pull up the ownership, all these guys are in the top, you know what I mean? In the top, whatever. But I just find it interesting sometimes that even when you run just something just randomly optimal, when you do it on a 3 or 4 game slate, you'll do this, you'll get these kind of results more often. But when you do it on a full 8 game slate, it's not too often that you get kind of lineups that kind of look like this. Now, again, you'd have to go back and see, are Green and Russell worth putting together in the same lineup, given the fact that Green could be really high owned, whatever it is. But I don't know, I just found it interesting.
Yeah, and if they are, is it maybe worth, pivoting somewhere else and running it back? I would say probably yes. If you're going to play both of them, you're counting on that game being close, which is a great pace environment for the Boston team, which means somebody from Boston it's going to be hard for them not to get there. Now, getting there is getting there versus other people getting there tonight. So it's a tricky situation. But in general, I like these plays in general. I'm going to be below the field on Russell and Green. I'm having a hard time getting below the field too much on. The issue with this game for me, with that game, and we're going to go game by game in a minute, but I just want to talk about this quick build.
Sure.
The problem I have with the Golden State situations, first of all, I think Russell does end up being a little bit more popular than people think. I think that this game, like every Golden State game, needs to be treated with kid gloves a little bit. There is serious danger of them getting massacred at any moment and missing fourth quarter run, which is, Russell missed it in the last game, and he was actually having a good game against the Lakers in that, people play the Russell-LeBron combo. I think that if the price is right, he's going to end up being owned. He's fine, but I do worry about how this game could go. The thing that makes me interested in both those guys more than I want to be is that these East Coast teams traveling out west, And it's not, and Boston's even like, they're playing without Hayward now. Like, it's a little bit like I could see it maybe hanging around, which makes it sort of tempting to want to go after, but you got to draw some lines. So it's one of the games that I'm struggling with the most, to be honest, on that slate. I'm leaning more towards just playing a guy like Green and not really touching most of the rest of it. But I could see that easily being a sneaky little shootout game that ends up, you think you're doing great.
How sneaky can it really be, right? I mean, if I don't know if Draymond Green is going to be actually 40%. That's again, it's 2:00 in the afternoon, so God knows what he's going to end up being. But if you have Draymond Green at like 40% and Russell at 30%, I mean, it's going to be.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be that high. I think Draymond's only going to be
Right.
around 25%, and I think Russell's probably going to be around the same. Maybe probably around there. I'm thinking high buy-ins. I do think people will like them. I mean, there's just, look at the DraftKings pricing. It's ridiculous. Everybody's underpriced. I love this Thomas. I actually really like this correlation, specifically this Washington, Minnesota. Like, this is a 4-man stack that I would be happy to use myself. I feel really good about that core. I'm not in love with Cory Joseph tonight as a play at 4,600 on this kind of a slate. Sure, he could get there. Sure,
getting there is something else. So again, we go back to talk about this all the time. So again, this was just me running projections, right? And just a lot of the projection system just liked him. But again, does he have a ceiling, right?
Right.
I mean, is he like a good median guy who, okay, I'll throw him in and hope he gets, I guess in this day and age, 6X is like the bare minimum you could want, right?
So Cory Joseph's had this spot before, and how many times has he reached 35 fantasy points? Let's think
not
about
much,
that.
Right?
And that's basically what you're kind of looking for, at least. I think he's reached it a couple times, but I think we're talking fractional. I mean, I'm looking back. It's.
Well, this is the danger. This is the danger. This is what we talked about. When I first put my sheet up, this is the danger of treating all, quote unquote, good values equally. Is there a better is there a $4,600 player who has a similar, even a little worse median projection than him, but has that ceiling, that has that upside that, what could be lower ownership that you'd probably want to pivot to. So again, just because, everybody can run optimizers and throw in, what the optimizers spit out is good plays, it doesn't mean that for a GPP where you're trying to beat 80,000 people, right, that it's going to be the best use of your money.
Yeah, I'm confused about the minutes projection on Cory Joseph, I guess. That's sort of a little bit what's driving me crazy. I know he played 1 million minutes in that Portland game. They were playing 3-guard lineups, both teams. Actually, Portland was kind of playing like a 4-guard lineup. They were playing Bazemore at the 4. I don't think you're going to see the same thing from this Lakers team. They'll play guards, but Cory Joseph doesn't match up physically with Danny Green, like size-wise. Like, it's not the same kind of guards you're getting with those little guards in Portland. So, because they were playing Simons and then there was also like Hood was the biggest guy they played. I think Bazemore might have even played the 5 at one point in that game. I don't know. I don't feel as locked into those minutes as everyone else does. And also this game could get ugly. And to answer your question, is there a guy at 46 or 4,700? I think there's 2 guys who stand out to me just above him. You have one of them in your lineup, and that's Covington. The other one is Willie Cauley-Stein. And it doesn't matter that it's different positions because we know we can move Russell over to the guard. And I know he's more expensive, so he wouldn't fit in this exact lineup. But It's just an idea of a guy who's a little bit more that I would maybe consider. And then you have, maybe you throw there's a lot of ways to go around to build a different thing. I think we should go game by game, but I just wanted to throw out a few general plays that are going to come up tonight. Yeah.
Okay. So let's just start with the Detroit game, I guess. That's the first one on my list, right? And again, I have off on my right, which, I don't want to bring in here, just one of the projections I look at, because these are what I kind of like just look at in my head, like what either people are going to like or what, the people who are smarter than me, project. And we talk about this a lot, like NBA projections are, you don't want to fade them all that hard. You know what I mean? Like football it's different, and baseball, whatever, but basketball, at least probably in the ball game, right? So Detroit, Charlotte, I mean, look, the only guy that popped as far as projections go, relative to value on the Detroit side was Drummond. Now I don't know if Blake Griffin is going to get a full complement of minutes. The assumption I'm using is 24 minutes. So if they give him 30 minutes, then we got to start thinking about that. But
that's interesting because I've seen projection systems between 24 and 30 minutes on him tonight.
Okay.
I think if it ends up being 30 minutes, people are going to jump all over the Blake play.
Okay.
And I have to say it's a good matchup. I would say on this slate, if there's a minutes cap, I would worry about any player because it's such a huge slate. I don't think it really matters that much for Drummond, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we talked about this the other day. That's really intriguing.
It depends on the situation, but this is an absolute crushing spot for Drummond. He's the guy who I'll have exposure to. I think I'll throw Derrick Rose into a lineup because I've seen Charlotte's defense just sort of lacking at times. They're going with the youth movement. It's not like he'll always be matched up with Rozier either. He's going to get some of these little guy defense with as much as we all love Devontae Graham and everything. Like, I mean, he's a lot smaller than Rose, and Rose can take advantage of anybody when he's going. I don't think that I really want to get crazy invested in this side of the game. I think that I'll have probably less of the field than Blake has, but it'll probably be close. I think that the more interest for me, sadly, is on the Charlotte side. And I don't even have that much interest over there, but I just have a couple guys that I think are worth mentioning. I don't really like this game all that much, which sucks because I do like attacking Charlotte. I will say that the one guy who I know I'll be above the field on the Detroit side, the only thing I can promise is Andre Drummond. Yeah,
and it's again, depending on ownership. I mean, he's going to be pretty highly owned, whatever. But is he going to be that more? Is he going to be that higher owned than?
So then it comes into a question: do we have to worry about ownership in this kind of situation? I don't think you have to as much tonight. This is one of the most spread out ownerships. It's interesting. There's a lot of good plays. Now it's going to condense, but it's spread out for a reason because you look at Drummond, but then you look at all the center spots. That's the only issue you get into with Drummond, which is also why I think that's why I want to be ahead of the field because I think 60 is a real possibility here in this kind of a matchup for him. Also, I'm not convinced about Detroit blowing anybody out, which worries me sometimes for Charlotte. I also don't think Charlotte can blow anybody out really either. So I want to play Drummond. I think the minutes projection on him is low. I think that he's the play. I don't really think that I want to get as heavily involved in Blake until I get a firm answer on his minutes because it is a good matchup for him. That's what I'll say. I might end up getting more on Blake later in the day, but for right now, I think the field's going to be on him more than I am.
Yeah, I'm not going to have any Detroit. I'll end up with AD as depending on how many lineups I have, he's definitely a big part of it.
You're not gonna. Oh, you play Drummond. You'll play Drummond.
Yeah. Drummond will be the only guy I play from that team.
Yeah. So I really like a guy on the other side of this game that I think that people are not going to go to. I actually think that the projection systems that I've seen have him too high. Cody Zeller. There is no one physically who's going to match up anyway. They have to play two bigs anyway. And I love guys like Bridges and Washington as a player. Like, I like Washington a lot. I do think that you could make an argument that there's a way Biyombo gets in this game a lot. I'm not going to play Biyombo, but this could end up being that's the one thing that scares me for Zeller is I think that you just see one of them whenever Drummond's on the court. And then they even have guys like Wood and even Griffin. These are all guys, they don't really have the size to match up with that much. So that's sort of the way that I'm leaning.
So it's interesting. So when this is the way my brain works along with yours, right? So again, I didn't really look at Cody Zeller only because again, he just didn't pop up in any of the, you know what I mean? The systems I was looking at as kind of a center that I would just have. So whenever I get like extra information like that, I say, okay, the first thing I want to do is see, what's the benefit of using him? Number one, like you said, he's going to be low owned, and I'm kind of looking up ahead at guys that, at least again, who I was looking at was, similarly priced that were projected higher. And I guess there's really nobody in the 5,400 range. You know what I mean? Like, I looked at, Horford at 6,100. He looks like someone that's going to show up. And then, Brian again at 6,100. And then if I went down, actually at 5,800. We'll talk about Holmes later, right? But I just, again, these other guys, at least I'm just sorting like by value, just look to be just a stronger value that for me to go to Zeller, I would need a reason. And to be honest, what you just said for me, I'm a great information aggregator, so I listen to everybody. So what you just said, that could be, especially at 2% ownership, could be just as good of a reason as any to move him up my list of guys to use, especially, like you said, if you're going to use a Drummond also, right? And you could play two centers. Maybe you'd want to play them both in the same lineup.
One of my first builds. I did that actually because I think it makes I do think it makes some sense. I also want to point out that Zeller is trending in the right direction. There was people worried about his minutes. Now there was one game that he got hurt and came back, but it was like hurt for a little bit against Indiana, I believe it was. And then he had the game against Boston where they lost by 20, so he didn't get any minutes. New Orleans got back to 28 minutes. Philadelphia, 27 minutes, played well. 34 the other night in Memphis. I watched that game. He was closing in a tight one. So assuming this game stays tight down the stretch, you can assume that he'd be the guy they'd want to go with, unless maybe he's struggling with with Drummond, which is possible because they're going to. But does he mean enough to their offense that they would sacrifice, playing Biyombo maybe instead? I don't know. I'm going to have more Zeller than the field, but I do worry about I worry about the matchup, and I think the matchup lends itself to him playing more. So I like both spots. I like both sides of it, and I think he's trending in the right direction in general. That's where we're at. So let's go to the next. Go to the next one.
San Antonio, Orlando again. You're talking about my process too. I mean, the only guy.
Mind looking on the game real quick while we do it?
Oh yeah, sure.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. Just so that people could see it.
So literally the only guy that showed up for me on either team as somebody that would be worth playing for me would be Vooch, and again, it just solely based on projections and sorting by value and things like that. It's just that nobody else in this game even showed up as anything close. Now, again, that doesn't mean that they can't play anybody from here, especially if there's good correlation and really low ownership. I'm just saying that from my first view, that was what came up. Now, again, whether that's right or wrong, you also have the issue of Vooch being that position, that center position where, you're going to have to forego the opportunity cost of guys like Drummond and guys like Cat and guys like even, Embiid or other guys you want to play. But I didn't come up with much anybody from this game.
I think I think it just reinforces tonight is the night for center in the utility spot. I really think I might need to go back to just not having almost any other builds. There's just too many guys who are going to get there. Now there's guys other places, but like these are 60 fantasy. These are like high priced 7-8x type of potential plays. And I know that sounds nuts, but like Vooch can put up a monster game here. To be honest, the other night Cat would have if he didn't get in foul trouble again. I don't know. I think Vooch at this price is definitely in play. I would love to have more of him, but it's just such a primo spot. I think this game is mostly a cross-off for me as well, which is nice because I don't have that many cross-offs. But I don't really see any necessary reason to play any of these guys in what should be sort of a slower pace game. I don't mind if you want to play Jonathan Isaac any night. I always love this guy's upside because of the steals and blocks, and I really like him as a player, but I just don't think this is like a matchup that stands out in any way. I think DeJounte Murray is always playable, but it's just frustrating with the minutes. But
when is he going to get the minutes that he? I don't want to say deserves, but when is he going to get 30?
The question is, does he need the minutes? If he plays 26 minutes tonight at 5,500, can he put up 45? Sure.
All right. The fact is, like you said, I mean, it's a game where if you were going to force something, I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot of big upside. You know what I mean? Upside volatility plays. So we could just move.
Let's move on. Yeah.
So Utah, Memphis. I'll put this up here. Again, we wouldn't be. Well, I had Utah, Memphis next on my list. So
that's fine with me.
Utah, Memphis next. Now, again, I don't want to get off brand or whatever, but let's call it what it is. Mike Conley is going back into Memphis. So whether they throw him a party or whatever it is, it's just something to put in the back of your head. But as far as just straight plays, as far as values go, as hard as this is to say, I really didn't have anybody popping so hard from this game either. I mean, I actually had Mitchell as probably the only guy on Utah. I mean, just on pure projections and pure numbers or anything like that popped. And on the Memphis side, so the Memphis side, I came up, Valanciunas, yet another center pops up. And the thing about Valanciunas is he's always kind of funny because he could be a 3 fantasy point a minute guy, in the right matchup. But I don't know if I want to mess with that against Gobert, even given that there's upside or whatever it is. So again, I wasn't really going to get too involved in this game, but tell me what you think.
No, I'm with you. And I'm also like curious, like who there else, the only thing is like, who else do they match up with Gobert for those extra 8 minutes that he plays or 9 minutes that Valanciunas wouldn't? And it is a tough one because they could put, I don't know, man. I guess you could put Triple J. You could do a couple different things, but for me, I like I'm taking the Mike Conley. I'm buying into it.
Of course, that's fine.
I'm into it. He's not going to be owned. I'm always about it when they're not going to be owned. He's cheap enough to where he can get there anyway. They might leave him on the court a few extra minutes. I just sign me up for Mike Conley.
What the point you made was this is why you're the best. Okay, is number one. I like the narrative, like you were saying, but even if I'm wrong, who cares? You know what I mean? Even if narrative doesn't mean anything, he's still not the worst play in the world. And number two, I can be wrong at 5% ownership. You know what I mean? Right. Like if he were 40% owned and whatever, then and the only reason he was popping was because of narrative street. If he was way too expensive otherwise, then maybe it's not the greatest idea in the world. But like you were saying, the risk versus reward just seems to be worth it. If you're wrong, then it's just probably a break-even okay play. But if you're right and he does for whatever reason either get more minutes or it's a little more aggressive than normal, that's I'm totally with it.
So I like to just throw in that this is a little bit of a side rant, but guys like Donovan Mitchell, who I love in this matchup, you can just see that Memphis has been just getting crushed by shooting guards. But like, I think I really like Donovan Mitchell as a player and as a guy. When your dad played in the NBA, like you tend to do things the right way. I think he's a good teammate. Now I know it sounds like a weird thing, but like I like betting on someone else in the backcourt better when the other guy who's going to be the usage monster is a good teammate, because maybe he sees Conley's got it going. Maybe Conley's taking more shots tonight. Like whatever it is, I just feel like there's every little extra thing makes me just feel like, well, Mitchell's not just going to try and take the game over if Conley's got it going when he gets the big celebration because they love him in Memphis. I think he gets the extra minutes. I'm going to buy into the narrative. And again, even if I'm wrong, this guy, he's made half of his shots in his game twice this year, and he's hit 6 times value on his current price and 7 times value in those 2 games. So if he just shoots the ball average or well, decently, he's going to like put up 6 or 7 times anyway. Also a huge up pace matchup. Lots of reasons to like him here.
Well, the other thing, again, is we're talking about upside, right? So if they're projecting Conley at 32 minutes, something like that, I mean, if you could see a way that he gets more than that, then obviously it's probably a good play. I probably think that some of his minutes was restricted because of the possibility of the game not staying close. I don't know how all the projection systems work, but I presume that at least part of that is factored in. I do think from a narrative perspective that even if this game were a blowout, they would definitely leave him out there for the Memphis fans. So I do think that there's probably some minute upside from there based on that. I
agree. And he's also had 2 days off. I mean, just everything's just leading me. And even in those last 2 games, I'm just going to take a quick one more look because I'm starting to think about putting him in like even more than I thought I was going to. He played 30 minutes on a back-to-back in his last game against Brooklyn, put up 30 fantasy points. It wasn't especially great, but, look, he put up 30 on a back-to-back and he's got 2 days off coming back. I just feel like I feel good about him tonight. It's just a question of the ultimate upside kind of situation. But I really like Conley, and I don't really think I want to get too involved in anything else in this game other than I will take some shots on Jaren Jackson all the time when he's going to be low owned under 6K. I just think the guy could put up 50 out of the blue in any matchup, and you just wouldn't know it. I expect him to foul out tonight probably in like 24 minutes, but definitely worth a GPP play for sure.
Well, also looking ahead,
there's one more guy. Sorry.
Looking ahead, we haven't gotten to this game yet, but if it turns out that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is really popular, and again, let's just say I was using this lineup, this is just like kind of a one-off with no correlation anyway. If I could find the extra 500, this could be kind of a little pivot. You know what I mean? I can go from Shai at high ownership to Conley low ownership, and who says I need Cory Joseph anyway? So I could find the 500. Going from him down to someone at 4,100 or something like that. So these are, things that I could think about along the way.
By the way, I also, and again, this is not a narrative. I just realized I forgot to mention one guy who I do like. There's a couple other guys in this game who are playable. Everybody on the Utah side should get a bump for this matchup. There's only one other guy on Memphis other than I mentioned the Jacksons. You can always play him. But I think that the guy who I would side with here would be the other revenge narrative, which is Jamison Crowder. He's playing a ton of minutes.
Jamison Crowder is more of a PPR receiver for the Jets, but I know.
I'm sorry, Jay Crowder.
Yeah.
Jay Crowder. Excuse me. I can do that all the time.
Yeah.
Jay Crowder is getting a lot of minutes. It's just the question of like Crowder versus PJ Tucker at that price. I prefer PJ Tucker with the situation, but I don't mind if you want to throw both of them in if we're short on value. On that same note, Joe Ingles makes some sense, but I don't really think I'm going to end up going there. I think Jay Crowder is kind of interesting.
Okay, so I'll keep that in mind. If I put a Conley one in, I could have a sort of a run back with Jay Crowder.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I mean, and also, you gotta. I think it's a decent spot anyway.
All right, go. Moving on. Are we going to Indiana, Houston next?
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, so Indiana, Houston. The good news is at least on one side of the equation, I think I know who I'm interested in. The other one we're gonna have to really talk about. But so on the Indiana side, there are two guys that popped pretty hard, and one guy kind of like a mid-range guy. So Brogdon and Sabonis both seem to project really, really well. Brogdon just continues to kind of perform, even though he's been kind of come back to earth a little bit. I mean, he's still just in his new role. He's just the freaking man there, and I don't know what kind of defense he's going to get from Houston. So I think he's, the projections even indicate. I mean, it's obviously a good play. And Sabonis is the other guy from that side. The only other guy that even comes up a little bit for me is Warren, but I don't know if I'm going to get to him. On the Houston side, these are the same questions we have every time either Houston plays or the Lakers play. You have the two big studs here, Harden and Westbrook. Play them both, play neither, or which one do you play? And both Harden and Westbrook are just really, really good projected values. It's going to be a question of which one of them you want to play. I don't know if I could avoid both of them. You know what I mean? I think I probably have to go with one of them. The real difficult thing is going to be what else, if anything, to play from this game. They might be dressing 9 players, right, or 10 players.
Right.
So we're still it's a totally different situation in the Pelicans game last night, because the Pelicans game, at least there was uses to spread around. Here, I mean, Harden and Westbrook are going to eat up so much of it, but they can't be the only ones touching the ball. I mean, someone's going to have to take shots. Someone's going to have to get rebounds. Someone's going to get steals. Someone's going to be on the court. And, this is going to be one of those where right now it's 2:15 or whatever. At 6, I have a feeling that with 15 minutes to lock, somebody from this game is going to be 30% owned. And I have no idea who it is. I just have this weird feeling that they're going to mention something about, I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be. Okay. But I think that whether someone's going to be really high owned, someone's going to get 10x in this game. I don't know who it's going to be. And I think the people who figure that out are going to be the people that have a big advantage in the slate.
Yeah, I don't know exactly who it's going to be either. I want to point out, I think this game is going to play slower than Houston usually plays without Capella in there and with Chandler in for at least probably half the game. Yep. I also think if for some reason Westbrook is out, which I think they would wait till at least Hauser was back or something until they sat him, which would be tomorrow. Hopefully. I mean, that's what I would be thinking if I was Houston. I think that what I would do here is I'm just going to load up on Westbrook entirely. I don't really care. Like, he's going to be more than half my lineups as of right now. That's just where I'm at. He's now 3,900 less than Harden. It's a different type of point now. It's like you're getting Westbrook at like what used to be Capella prices, and I just think that I think Westbrook is going to go nuts. And look, he's had a couple foul trouble. He put 4 fouls in the first quarter the other night. I mentioned this earlier, but I really like the Westbrook angle. I really like Tucker on that side. I like Chandler. I'm going to be ahead of the field on those guys. I'm a little worried about how many minutes Chandler will play. The guys who I was interested in were Cephalosha and Rivers. I like Rivers because I think he'll play a ton of minutes, but he just doesn't do enough. And same thing with McLemore. I don't mind throwing him into 1 or 2 lineups, but I don't feel good about it. Obviously, if Westbrook was out, that would change. So it is going to be interesting. That's why I sort of like am randomly using some of these other guys to play along with Westbrook. But I don't really have a strong preference outside of Tucker and Chandler. I think I'll be about with the field on Harden, which I think is probably going to be around 20%, unless a ton of value opens up. If a ton of value opens up, then I'm going to be interested in Harden. Otherwise, I don't really see the reason to pay 12-3 on a slate where you've got great values at 8-4 and 8-7-6. And I love what you mentioned on the other side. I think Brogdon is going to be one of the most overlooked guys on the slate. And if Westbrook plays, I love him. If he doesn't play, I don't like him as much. And I'm not going to say Westbrook about defense. I'm just saying Westbrook makes the game play faster. They play a lot slower without him. So Sabonis, same type of thing, but I do think I'll be, probably 20 to 30% Sabonis tonight. I really like Sabonis. I'm a little nervous because it's there's ceiling, sure, but like there's a lot of guys I like in this price range. And like you said, I'm going to have to X some guys out who are going to be popular because I can't play all of them.
And I guess we have to talk about, for just 2 minutes, if they do rule Westbrook out, Harden's going to be 1,000,000,000% owned, but I don't know how you don't have him. It's going to be very difficult to fade.
It is going to be a tough fade.
There are raw points out there. You know what I mean? Like, there are definitely raw points out there, but it's going to be very, very difficult.
Like, he can put up 70 here and you'd still be okay if.
Yeah. What about in the second half then?
It's an interesting point. With that, we should probably get to our next game because we're gonna have to wait to hear on that one.
Let's do it. Okay, so let's do Philadelphia OKC.
Yeah.
So Philadelphia OKC. From the Philadelphia side again, just from what popped up for me as far as projections and value and things like that, was nothing particularly sexy. It was Embiid was fine. One of yet another center who is probably good value. Along with Vooch and Drummond and other guys. And then Simmons is always Simmons. I've never really had a lot of luck with him, but he's obviously going to be pretty decent. And Horford, I had him kind of like break even, but whatever. And then on the other, and nobody else from Philly. And on the other side, again, as I mentioned before, again, I don't know why, again, I'm not the projection guy, but for whatever reason, Shea has been just, a really big part of a lot of optimals out there. And I guess, the 5,900 price tag, given, I don't know what sample size they're using for his rates and for how well he's doing, but he's obviously popping as a really big value and really, really popular. Again, for me, instinctively, I would say I don't need him, but playing against Philly defense is certainly, it's kind of tough to go against. So it's, it's that normal struggle that, do you go against projections with what you feel, or do you go, with the field, or you do whatever? For me, I would say, unless I found something really, really good on the Philly side, I wouldn't probably use him in all that many GPP lineups because I would have not that interesting correlation. Maybe I'll play him with Embiid or somebody like that. But I don't know how much of him, in especially in the big field GPPs, I'm going to get of a really popular SGA.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think that I like SGA. I think he's too cheap. It's a sticker shock thing. The problem is there's a lot of guys who are too cheap. The one thing about him is that there is a massive ceiling with him. I don't think people realize it. He's I think that he's probably one of the few guys in under 6K who can get 60.
Sure.
I'm not saying he's going to, and it feels he's also very safe. I don't feel like even in a blowout that he's going to get less than 30 too often here. I know he's had some up and down games, but there's circumstances for a lot of that. I think overall, the player that he is, he gets 30 here almost all the time, somewhere between 30 and 60. So I think he's definitely on my board. I don't think I'm going to be much above the field, if at all, probably near the field. I think I'm going to be the same way with Embiid. I think I'll be, other than that, the only guy I have interest in that I'm probably going to be at or near the field or maybe ahead is Steven Adams. Everybody else I'll be below. I like Steven Adams, and I think that people might get on him a little bit tonight just because the price is so low. There's too many centers, so probably he ends up out of there. But for right now, I definitely will throw in a lineup or two with Steven Adams. They probably will be lineups with Embiid and Shea or something like that, but it won't be very many of them.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Sacramento, LA, and then we got the two.
Wait, we missed. We did
Oh,
we have
we have to
Washington,
go back to
Minnesota.
Washington, right? That's right.
Yeah, Washington, Minnesota. Yeah.
Let's do it. I feel we talked about this so much before. So when I pull up this game, again, just as far as numbers and things like that, I mean, there's nothing particularly different about what we described. So for the Washington side, I mean, obviously, look, it's 243 freaking total. I mean, it's going to be a popular game. But like you said, how popular is it going to be on an 8-game slate with a lot of options? Who knows? But I would like to think that I would hope that it would be one of those games that a lot of people are going to be stacking. But we might as well go through it.
It's funny we say that, but I don't think the ownership is going to be too crazy.
No, that's what I'm saying. There's so many options out there that whatever. So, I mean, there's Bradley Beal. Like we said, he's always got 60-point upside. I mean, every game. The other guy we talked about already was Thomas Bryant. And the other two, and Isaiah Thomas, I think we go back to what we discussed a couple of days ago, how much does Bradley Beal eat into Isaiah Thomas? More to the point, how much does Isaiah Thomas is now with getting real minutes impact Bradley Beal? Slash, are those two guys you probably should not play together if you were going to stack this? That's an interesting question. And then you got drop down to Hachimura, who you said you liked, and he's fine. I don't know how much of them I'll play today. Troy Brown might be popping at least by the end of the day as a value out there. And you'll appreciate, I don't think I'm going to go with Davis Bertans this time, although he did hit the other day. And that's as far as I was going to go down on the Washington side. And on the Minnesota side, cat is cat. You could get 50 in the first half and 10 in the second. He can get 50 in the first half and 50 in the second. He's obviously got a ceiling. He obviously also has foul risk. He's just a GPP play as far as I'm concerned. I am not, and the other guys on Minnesota nobody's really popping that heavy for me, but the guys that are out there, are Teague again. Hopefully he's healthier now. And Covington, as we described again, he's the next guy. I'm not a Wiggins guy, and I can see why people might be, but I'm just not playing him at 8,300. He's not popping wide enough for me to get this in. So for me, it would be just cat, honestly, unless I was really stacking it, in which case I would probably go with a natural correlation of probably Teague and Towns. If it were last year, I'd probably try to go 3 of them, maybe like Towns, Teague, and Covington. But I don't know, maybe that's not the worst idea in the world. But do all 3 of them, I guess is in this lineup right here, maybe, or close to it. I could probably get there pretty easily. You could run it right back with Beal and Bryan, or 2 of them, or Thomas and Bryan, and you can get a fun stack that could win you the slate. I mean, that's for sure if it all hits. Especially the fact that Minnesota is a 7-point favorite. So, if in fact Beal and Washington outperform, you get that extra upside of, extra minutes, and God forbid this game goes to overtime. Then if you don't have this game, you lose. So that's about all I got from this game.
Yeah, that's pretty good analysis. I'm pretty much with you. So I just want to, I mentioned before that I liked both sides having like a player from each minimum setting. I thought that was interesting. I just want to read off my current ownership projections,
Sure.
And it's probably going to change, but I have Towns at 35 to 45%. I have Beal at 30 to 35%. I have Covington at 25 to 30%. I have Isaiah Thomas at 20 to 25%. I have Hachimura at 20 to 25%. I have Thomas Bryant at 25 to 30%. I have Davis Bertans at 5 to 15%. I have Jeff Teague at 15 to 25%. Jeff Teague is the real question mark on this whole thing. So what's weird is he's coming off of an illness. I know it's an infection, but and he only played 23 minutes, and they really were limiting him to that. He played well, but why did he have his minutes limited? That's what's worrying me. So I'm debating on what I hear about Teague's minutes to decide where to go. If I think he's a full go in 30 minutes is possible, I think that's a really, really good play. Wiggins, I'm just going to throw in a lineup or 2, but not really have any interest in. Travion Graham, Jake Layman, Troy Brown, all going to have maybe a tiny bit of exposure to, but not going to get crazy with any of them. But mostly it's the guys who I mentioned at the top that I'm pretty significantly ahead of the field on.
Now Teague is not he's only point guard eligible, right?
Yeah.
I presume that. So what I'm trying to do here is, again, I don't want to get too into this. I want to see, and what was Conley again?
Conley 6,400.
So if I get all this stuff in, we'll get back to that. If we could find some way to do this. Hold on, Minnesota, Washington. Okay, and this was this, and we'll get back to that. Okay. All right. So let's move on to.
Yeah.
Where were we?
We're gonna go to, I think, the evening games now.
Sure. So we do Sacramento, LA first, or Boston, Golden State?
Let's do Sac LA.
Okay. So Sac LA. Now you and I are both big. It's so funny. We first spoke today. It was we had the exact same comment. Like nobody or bigger Bogdan Bogdanovich fans than you and me, right? I mean, we play him probably more than anybody else in the world, and
he does great by us, by the way. I feel
he does great, and I think I'm going to be off him today. But you know, let's take a look at it again from the Sacramento side. As gross as it is, I honestly didn't really. The only guys that popped up were, you know, and individually, Joseph didn't even project all that well. But just because he fit this optimizer build that he just kind of showed up here. Mm-hmm. But he was just fine. Healed was just fine, and honestly, everybody else really just didn't pop. And as far as good values go, I mean, they did price up Bogdan to 6,700, and you know, this is a pricing game, you know, and Bogdan at 4,400, which he's been, is just a different deal, and again, especially in matchups that he was just, you know, it was just better. I'm honestly pretty much off of Sacramento this game, which kind of feels off-brand, but you know, what's on brand is making money. So I think that's where I'm going to end up. And on the Lakers side, for me, again, it's just the same question I always have. Whether AD and LeBron are both. Oh God, AD's only 9,600. Oh crap. So between the two of them, it's always a question of both of them, neither of them, or one of them. I don't think this slate is going to be any universe where I play both of them. With all the other stuff there is out there, I could see some variations where I play an AD or a LeBron, but where am I going to play them? You know, I don't know. Again, if I don't like Sacramento guys that much, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like if I play AD, I got to pick a Sacramento guy, which I don't know which one I want to pick.
I don't think you do.
Yeah, so I'm probably off this game as gross as that is.
Yeah, it's I like that, you know, we have to make stands somewhere, and it's weird because we're the big Sacramento guys usually. But again, I don't mind Healed. I don't mind I don't like these guys that I might be near the field on them. With Healed, I might be ahead of the field just because I think there's still. I mean, he took 21 shots the other night. I just want to mention real quickly though that we're not going to play Bogdanovich, who just put up 53. And he was 8 for 21 from the floor. It wasn't even like he shot well. And I'm just worried about it a little bit. Like, I feel like we could be kicking ourselves for going, oh my goodness, did we really just let sticker shock kill us? Because I could see if you're going to play like AD and one other Laker, which by the way, there is one other Laker that you play if it's close, and that's Danny Green if it's close. He's
right.
3,700.
He's the next guy, actually. Yeah, he was the next guy.
I don't know if I like him separately though, because when it's not close, he just plays 20 minutes. And Rondo's coming back or supposedly coming back. I don't know. We'll see about that. So I really think that you could play AD, Danny Green, and Healed in a lineup, and maybe even Cory Joseph. But I don't think I'm going to go too crazy with otherwise. I just think AD is the one guy I know I'll be overweight on. I think the ownership isn't going to be nearly reflective. I think if we just had like an all good to go kind of a thing, even on this crazy slate, you'd be seeing AD at like 40% owned. He's going to be too low owned tonight. He's going to put up 50 plus fantasy points pretty much no matter what, in my opinion, even if it's a blowout, which I think it may be. I just think that Anthony Davis is a prime play, but I just got to leave the rest alone because I'm running out of players.
Gotcha. Okay. And the last game, the Boston Golden State game, on the Boston side, this is you know, I should say one thing about projections, but maybe another time. You know, I will. You know, a lot of people, you know, you have your ownership projections and you also have the points projections. Mm-hmm. Now, again, might be conspiracy theory or whatever, but I would be careful about using the same site for ownership projections as for player projections. And the reason why is what I found, again, this is me being the information aggregator on a lot of the sites, is I don't know if they have that Chinese wall between the people that do the projections and the ownership projections, but it just seems as though, look, I'm always looking for that edge. So the first thing I would look at is, okay, let me sort these guys by values. And then, let me see if any of these guys that are sorted by values are also projected low owned. And it just never happens. And the reason why, I guess, is, when they're doing their ownership projections also, they say, well, if we think these guys are such good values, they're probably going to be pretty high owned also. So it's what I like to do sometimes is I'll look at the projections from one site and ownership projections from another site. And sometimes you'll see a little disconnect there. But in any case, on the Boston side, I'm only really seeing Kemba and Tatum. I mean, one place had Cantor actually is pretty decent, but it seemed like kind of an outlier, so I wanted to ask you about him.
I think if Cantor plays 26 minutes, he's going to put up like 40 fantasy points, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that's why I have him at like 20 minutes here, so. And then on the other side, on the Golden State side, we talked about this before. So Russell and Green seem to be the two highest popping players. Seems to make sense. They're by far the two best players on the team, right? With taking up the most usage, I would imagine. And so those are the two guys that are going to pop. I mean, Draymond Green at 5,300 and Russell at 8,000, depending on where you go. I mean, they're both showing a good values, and they're both showing as extremely popular. So, are they good plays? I'll probably use them. But again, to be smart, I'll probably only use them in lineups where I have, some contrarian stuff elsewhere. I know you said it's a slate you don't have to worry about ownership too much, but, I got to worry about it a little bit. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't play, I don't even know the answer, but like if I look and I see that there are a couple of really high-owned guys that, I wouldn't play them with Russell and Green, but they certainly look like good plays. And the other guy we kind of looked at, we talked about earlier, is Willie Cauley-Stein. Whether, again, he's not really showing up as great value, but, he's like an upside kind of guy. He's like really active and coming off the injury or coming off whatever. You never know. One day he might get that 32-minute run or whatever it is. But that was pretty much what I had from this game.
Yeah, I want to throw out that I think Jordan Poole is going to play a ton of minutes, and I actually am interested in Jordan Poole. This guy will shoot himself into a game at one point. He's shooting himself out of them all the time right now, but he literally might play the most minutes of any player in this game, and he has no fear of shooting anytime. So I will play Jordan Poole and hope that it works out right. But I just want to mention that if the game is close, D'Angelo Russell has been what I've always been critical of Russell, and I've always thought he's overrated because his numbers are, and look, they still are kind of empty. Like the teams aren't not winning, obviously, but I do want to point out that he's changed one thing drastically, and I think that it's going to make him a better everything play in DFS forever. The reason he was streaky before was because he never got to the free throw line. He's the highest scoring guard that ever didn't get to the free throw line. One of the lowest percentages in the history of basketball for a guy with his usage. I think it might have been the lowest. Now he's getting to the free throw line. That's gonna up his floor a ton. So maybe not on this slate, but something just to keep in mind going forward. I do think if you're going to play like D'Angelo and Draymond, you could even play those guys with Cauley-Stein or Poole and then run it back with one of the guys from Boston. But it's just not going to be the way that I go tonight for the most part, unless some things change.
So we could have some fun now. So what we could do is, so I've been, kind of like fiddling with this as we kind of like talked about other players and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so what I did with this kind of lineup here is I got rid of Russell and Green from this lineup, and I put in this 0% owned run back of Conley and Jay Crowder, right? Mm-hmm. So I have the three Minnesota guys to include Teague, who, like you said, there's a little bit of a worry, but you know what? At 2%, I can be worried. Mm-hmm. And
you got the hammer. I gave you the hammer a minute ago.
And I took Isaiah out, and I put in I just used Beal and Brian. And if we could find me a $4,200,
I just gave him to you. I gave him to you. Just gold a minute ago. Jordan Poole.
Poole. So we sit here, and what happens is if we go here, watch this. We go boom. You sign the lineup, and then we can have some fun. So now If this thing wins, and believe me, this lineup will not be touched. Okay, so if this lineup wins, we could be freaking superstars.
I love this lineup, by the way. I'm gonna have to get a little version of that myself or something.
Exactly.
I really am enjoying that one. We did get news, by the way, that Avery Bradley has a hairline fracture in his leg just a minute ago.
All right, forget everything we said the last hour.
No.
We're gonna go back to the beginning.
I don't see Avery Bradley changing this slate.
We're not gonna go. We're not gonna go all in. KCP now. Ooh, KCP.
He's questionable even, and then we got Rondo coming back, so it's not really. We'll see if Rondo's out also again.
Is it nationally televised?
Probably, but Rondo, I don't know how many minutes he can play. That's the only problem.
Okay.
But what if he, if it was a small slate, I would just take a shot on it. Maybe on a showdown or something.
So let me just, before we go, let me just again we'll see if we didn't go over any of these guys that kind of popped. So Bruce Brown Jr. I don't know why he even popped in there. Did you look at him for today?
I don't play Bruce Brown.
There it is. There it is.
Is he even in? Like, what is happening? I don't
know. I have no idea. That's what I'm saying. That's why you have to a little sanity check with some.
Did I miss somebody else being out? Bruce Brown. I don't even think Bruce Brown. This is like.
He might not even be playing.
If he was 3K, I wouldn't play him.
Okay, there it is. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, man, this has been really good. Guys, really appreciate you hanging out here with us. We're going to get out of here. We'll have more videos to come. We'll be doing some live shows on Twitch too coming up soon. We're going to be doing some football stuff later on. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys.
Wait, Bobby, I'll tell you that if it's like that's 12:30 and it's late at night and Jordan Poole is in the money, is in the hunt to win this thing, we're getting back on Twitch and we're gonna sweat this thing.
That sounds good. We'll absolutely do that. Hopefully we'll have some sweat show for you guys later tonight. All right, guys. Sheets, thanks a lot, man. And for all you guys, really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.